胃癌。他父亲叮嘱家人，在他死后呢，把自己的遗体捐献给医学院，因为这个人是大连的，就是他父亲希望把自己的身体捐献给大连医学院，给学生做解剖学习用。然而在他父亲死了以后呢，他母亲却拒绝捐出他父亲的遗体，所以即使是本人愿意死后捐出自己的遗体或者是器官，那么也可能遭到家里人的反对。
To save time, I'm going to continue and read it in translated version only. So, to have more time, Dr. Yuan and David Matas will answer your question. The integrity of body and soul, and would want to have the whole body buried in peace after death. From another angle, since the communists came to power in China, with frequent purges and killings by the party, the morals of Chinese people have been pushed downwards rapidly, with people worrying only about themselves. People do not intend to help others when alive, let alone thinking about helping others after death. I had a classmate in medical university, Mr. Liu. His father had been diagnosed with stomach cancer. His father told his family members to contribute his body for medical students to study anatomy. But after his father died, his mother refused to donate his father's body. So even though a person might agree to be a donor, his family members still would not allow it. The process that our hospital used to arrange organ transplants was, the hospital will check through the local public security bureau, law courts, the Supreme Court, etc. When they found a matching type organs, our hospital will prepare for organ transplantation. Of course, the operation will be arranged on the same day as the execution day. Our hospital would arrange 3 people to get the organ, a surgeon, an anesthetist, and a nurse. But they all wore army uniforms so that they could mix with the execution team. So if we saw doctors dressed in army uniforms, we knew that there would be an organ transplantation operation today. I heard from some colleagues that the person to be executed usually was not dead after being shot, because the less time that the organ lacked blood flow, the higher the successful rate of the operation. That is only what I heard. But one day, I saw an anesthetist dressed in army uniform carry a stoma in his hand when leaving with his team. We insert a stoma into a patient's stretcher to help the patient breathe. When the patient cannot breathe for him or herself, I then realized that the prisoner was not dead at that time. Otherwise, they would not need to use a stoma. So I'm certain that when the prisoner lost consciousness after being shot and was not able to breathe on his own, but his heart was still beating, the doctor would insert the stoma into his stretcher to help him breathe. Well, the person would finally die after his organs was removed. This evil procedure is organized, government controlled by the Public Security Bureau, law courts, and the Supreme Procuratorate and hospitals. Of course, all the medical personnel who were involved in organ transplant operation would not openly talk about it or let the family members of the prisoners know. In my view, this is state-controlled murder. Once our office manager attended a national organ transplantation conference in Beijing. After the conference, he talked to us privately how they discussed ways of improving the successful ratio. A well-known doctor at the conference said that to maximize the successful transplanting of a heart, sometimes they would just arrange a private place in the hospital to finish off the prison, so they could take the organ for immediate transplant. In China, under communist brainwashing, people are spiritually paralyzed. They do not understand the concept of human rights or morality. Many people do not think that it is immoral to take a prisoner's organ without consent. let alone connect it with being a human rights issue. In present-day China, people have no chance to ask for human rights. How would a dead person have a chance? I want to tell you of an event that I witnessed in 1985 when I was a third-year medical student. I was doing internship in the gynecology and obstetrics ward after we had studied theory. I saw a girl about 20 years old lying in bed. My teacher told us quietly that this girl was pregnant, without being married, and was waiting for an abortion. At that time, it was illegal to become pregnant before marriage, and no child was allowed to be born if that was the case. This girl was publicly shamed, and people turned their nose up at her. She was 6 to 7 months pregnant and had already been injected with oxytocics to hasten parturition 3 days before. She was in pain for 3 days already, and that day she could not bear the pain, so she crawled out of the bed, 2 hands holding her belly, and walked around to try to ease the pain. And she did not even care that she was not wearing underwear. There were more than 10 students present, some males. I moved my eyes away from her. Suddenly someone called, "Coming out, coming out." I turned my head, a pair of small legs coming out from between the girl's legs. The girl was in such pain, her face was in despair. I was so shocked. My mind was blank. And suddenly I remembered that when I was small, I saw a donkey giving birth in the countryside, just like this, a pair of small legs out first. I saw a nurse quickly walking towards her. I thought that she would calm this girl down and help the girl back to the bed. But that nurse shouted, "Why did you get off the bed? Who asked you to get off the bed? Don't you ever want to have a baby in the future?" It's hard for me to forget this case. She may have done things not morally good, but she is still a human being. How can she be treated worse than an animal? As long as one is in hospital, he or she should be treated as a patient. During 1986 to 1987, I was doing internship in Ansan City Hospital. In the internal circulation ward, one day, the vice president of the hospital suggested to our ward chief doctor that he should conduct cardiac catheterization experiments. Cardiac catheterization uses a very fine tube inserted into the joint of the upper leg and is pushed through the vein to the heart to check heart disease. I know that this method was only used in a few big hospitals at the time due to their experience and advanced equipment. So the chief doctor of our ward told the vice president of the hospital that he was worried that the operation might endanger the patient's life because the medical skills may not be adequate. The president replied, "Don't worry, a few people dying is not an issue. The main point is to get this skill up to the required level." I felt a chill down my spine when hearing his words. I felt that the vice president was so determined to advance his own career, but not for the purpose of saving people's lives. The chief doctor and I clearly understood that if this hospital could claim that they had achieved this level of skill, the vice president's future would be well placed. Under communist rule, it is easy to see the value of a Chinese person's life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yuan. Right, we've heard from David Matas about organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners. We've also heard from Dr. Yuan about the general situation when he was practicing in China and the lack of respect for human life. now we can have some questions from the floor. I'm sure there's plenty of questions from people for both of our speakers.
Chairman has given me permission to read out a statement. Mr. David Mattis, Dr. Wan, these are notes I jotted down. You may wish to respond to them or you may not. I'll be as brief as possible. Can you hear me? With all due respect, I don't think you will shame the Beijing regime into sweetness and light or into sudden awakening of civil conscience whatsoever. This regime is guilty of genocide, infanticide. Approximately 90% of all judicial executions in the whole world, quite apart from organ harvesting, etc., etc. Only the bringing down of the Beijing regime can solve this world problem. Only the bringing down of that regime. Only a civil uprising triggered off by the implosion of the Chinese economy will achieve this. Nothing else will. An initial first kick-off would be a world boycott of all goods manufactured on mainland China, a world boycott. I suggest we start this tomorrow morning. If it's made in mainland China, don't buy it. Don't buy it. Send them bankrupt. If you do this, you will make an impact. Only the holy dollar will roll the Beijing regime down into oblivion, will roll the Beijing regime into oblivion, where it belongs. If this takes off, you will be told this. You will be told, but you will bankrupt lots of Australian and Western business people if you do that. So what? Bankrupt them. And to hell with them. What you're dealing with is a merciless regime. So you have to be merciless in return. No quarter until this regime is sent to the wall. Sent to the wall. Under communism, all human life is expendable. Under communism in any country, all human life is expendable. Thank you very much.
Well, it's very difficult to generalize like that. I would say that there's been good people, well, I would say there's been people who've been willing to stand up to China and people not willing to stand up to China everywhere. There's no one place that stands out of my mind as particularly good or particularly bad. I mean, I've got, in every place I go to, I can think of people that I thought were great and people I thought were kind of not so great on this issue. I will say that over time, the reaction I've gotten has improved, partly because, you know, we just kept at it. When we first came out, the whole thing seems very strange. I mean, obviously, this is not a common behavior. There's a lot of organ transplant abuse in the world, but everywhere else it's a black market. You don't get government complicity the way you get in China, and the initial reaction is true. It sounds odd, hard to believe, but over time is basically our